Okay, I'm going to get started. So good evening, everybody. I'm Dr. Margaret Oakes of the English department, and this is the second of a series of conversations. I'm recording this as a podcast with alumni from the English department. I know one of whom is in grad school now, Dan. We ask you to talk about that in a minute. Are you not? Yes. Okay.
You are correct.
Yes. So, but I really wanted to focus these to showcase the really wide variety of careers that our majors have that there's no way our students could know about. So this is our way to educate them and really to think about how do I get to some exciting place where these folks are, after I walk out of here on May 7th or 8th or whatever that's going to be. So I'll introduce all of our panelists, and then I'm going to pose a couple of questions. If you have a question, please put it in the Q&A, not the chat. That'll make it easier for me to respond to those. And then I will convey those to our panelists. And we are recording this, just so everybody knows. Watch yourself. So put on my little glasses and get going. So in alphabetical order, Dan Smith. Dan, give us a wave. Dan graduated in 2013 with a bachelor's degree in English. Dan started his professional career creating digital content for a research institute in global energy. Did I describe that correctly, Daniel? Okay.
You did.
And then moved into public relations in Washington. Dan currently manages digital campaigns for clients, especially those in the energy sector. Dan also had the unique experience of being an intern with the Greenville News working on obituaries, which I'm sure could be really interesting. Zach Treu is also a member of the class of 2013. Zach has worked in television, not in New York or Los Angeles, as you might assume, but in Washington, D.C., his entire career, first for the PBS NewsHour, then the larger PBS organization, and now for National Geographic Partners, which I believe, Zach, I'm describing this correctly, the broadcasting arm of the National Geographic Society. Is that how you would characterize that?
It's a partnership with the Disney-owned broadcasting side.
Right. All right. Zach was a double major in English and Communication Studies and had a couple of internships while in college, where he started his career as a professional writer. Mize Turner was an English and Comm Studies double major as well and graduated in 2005. Allie has been in marketing and advertising since she graduated from Furman and has been with Comcast, I would say, in various capacities for much of your career. Yeah. And Allie's based in Atlanta. So I'm just going to go around again in alphabetical order just to be fair. And my first question, now I have to say to you, this is true with almost all of my alumni. I read your job description and I'm like, deliverables, stakeholders, I have no idea what this means. And I only know that Zach works in television because I know Zach works in television. So could you please explain to us in slightly more generic terms what you do for a living, Dan? We'll start with you.
I would be happy to. And good evening, everybody. It's great to be back with some familiar faces here and also some new paladins. So thank you for making the time to listen to us talk about what we've been doing since we graduated. You're absolutely right, Dr. Oakes. Buzzwords are all too common, especially in consulting. And what does consulting mean? That's a difficult question too. But I can tell you a little bit about what I do on a day-to-day basis. So as Dr. Oakes mentioned, I work for APCO Worldwide. We're a mid-sized consulting firm headquartered in Washington, D.C. We have about 800 employees across the globe, but my focus is here, and I'm embedded within our digital and public affairs practices. What does that mean? So the digital background really comes from my experience prior to this. Well, I'll talk to a little bit my journey getting to this position, but it's in everything you would expect from a digital perspective. So social media, managing online presences, building out strategies for clients, helping them figure out how can we expand, maximize the reach and influence of our content and the messaging that we want people to engage with and to resonate. And from the public affairs perspective, it's usually oriented around key policy issues that are important to their strategic priorities as a business. So being at that intersection was something I was always interested in, and it's allowed me to get back to my roots and passion for energy policy. And my client base right now is oriented entirely around the energy industry. And so it really, for me at least, represents the best of all worlds that I want to be involved in. And I've certainly found, if I can plug the firm in English degree, that my writing skills have proved to be very worthwhile, and not just in the way that we wrote back in college, but now just a really succinct email or a well-written tweet, excuse me. Those are things that are hard skills to learn, but this degree will really give you a leg up in that respect. Did I do a decent job of giving you some generic terms there, Dr. Rose?
That is perfect. Thank you. Much more specific. Sure. Okay, Zach. I just loved Zach's job description is great. It's so TV. But like, I watch the National Geographic Channel. I understand what you do on that level. So how do we get from my screen back to you?
Yeah, well, stick around to the end and you see my name some of the time. So I am a senior unit manager for the National Geographic Channel. Specifically, I work on the global, international, and regional programs on our linear broadcasts and on streaming services like Disney Plus and Hulu. What that means on a day-to-day basis is I am the point person in network, the network exec role to a certain extent, for our third-party production companies that create the bulk of our content. I'm the guy who they pick up the phone and call and complain to when things are going wrong. The one guy they flag issues to, the guy who has to come to the higher ups in the company and tell them when something's going to be very late and that we have a problem on our hands. But yeah, I maintain schedules, I maintain deliverables, which is a huge keyword for me. But that basically just means the various assets that we need to make sure the program actually hits the screen. That can be like the 60 gigabyte master file, the descriptions that we use in TV listings, photography, National Geographic, obviously, very big on photography. And I also just make sure that our standards are kept. National Geographic, despite being owned by Disney and fully corporate in that way, we have a robust research team. We want to make sure that everything we put on screen can be backed up and is legitimate. So I thankfully don't have to do that much of the research myself, but I'm the one who ensures that every single bit that we do is covered in that way. And also in COVID times, we pay a lot more attention to what our third-party production companies are getting themselves into. We review shoot approval requests, make sure that every place that we go, every fourth-party contract that we have is vetted, and we are following all regional laws and having everything's business compliant to the best way we could possibly do it. So hopefully it wasn't too buzzwordy, but I'm the guy behind the camera, making sure everything kind of works out the way it should.
Now, Allie is mostly or entirely working at home, I think. I didn't ask Dan this, but are you there? Are you home? Where are you mostly physically right now, Zach?
Oh, me? Yeah, I'm on my couch.
But working, where do you work from? Do you work from home? Do you work from an office?
Yes, I work from home. I shouldn't have been. I started in APCO about 5 weeks before we all got sent home, which is a shame. It's a lovely office. It's about as cool as a National Geographic branded office should be. And a lot of my portfolio is London-based, UK-based production companies. So theoretically, I should have been able to go out there a decent amount. In fact, my boss, up until last month, was London-based, and I worked for her for 2 years. Never actually met her.
Oh,
kind of weird.
That is the way of the world right now, though, right? Which are and Dan, are you at home all the time, or are you come in sometimes, or what's your life right now?
Yes, if we can call this one-bedroom apartment a home, that is where I have been, and we're upgrading to somewhere with a den, so a lot to look forward to. But yes, have been working from home pretty much since this started, and until Omicron came around, we did have the opportunity to go in, a couple of days a week, but it just wasn't the same, being back in the office with fewer folks in there, a lot of dim lit desks, and I think I have gotten to a little bit of a routine. It will be tough to, put on collared shirts again on a consistent basis, but I do look forward to some of the camaraderie and just being able to catch up with folks and get to know colleagues in person. Lots to look forward to in that respect.
It does seem like the students might need to look forward to an environment that is much less people filled than the one that they are in now. Because, we are in class, occasionally be Zooming for various reasons, but I feel like students are probably more engaged with human beings on a daily basis than many, many, many people in the workplace right now. It's kind of just my sense of things.
I think that's true, and we can speak to this later, Dr. Oaks, not to interrupt you, but quite a few folks that have started at APCO right out of college, first jobs, have spoken with them about some of the challenges presented by virtual work. But I do think it's helped people be more kind of empathetic and compassionate and really try to get to know each other as much as we can in this environment.
Yeah, because it's definitely more work. Okay. Now, Allie, tell us what you do.
Yes. Hi, everyone. So I'm an account executive. So I'm the sales lady for Effectv, which is the advertising division of Comcast. So I'm selling TV commercials, 30-second, 15-second, 60-second commercials that you see in content across many types of screens, in cable content, and on various platforms. So I actually sell commercials in Nat Geo. How about that? And I've been at Comcast for about 6 years now. And I work with all different types of clients. When I first started at Comcast or at Effectv, I was a local account executive. So I was working with clients who just wanted to advertise the Atlanta area, right? So I had furniture stores, car dealers, all types of different businesses. If you wanted to air a commercial to reach the Atlanta DMA or market, then those are the types of clients I was working with. And then a couple of years ago, I moved up to our regional team. So now I'm working with more regional clients that are advertising the Southeast region. They advertise everywhere, but I'm handling their buys in the Southeast. So clients like Rooms to Go and Publix. We also have, we call it Tune in Business. So if you're watching TV and you see a commercial for the Masked Singer, it's advertising for more TV essentially. So I work with those types of clients. But on a day-to-day basis, I'm building customized campaigns, and the TV kind of industry, I'm sure Zach, you know this, is changing. It's crazy. Like viewership is super fragmented. Gone are the days where you sit in front of your TV at 8 o'clock and watch a program. Everything is on demand. And by on demand, I mean, I watch it when I want to watch it and when it fits in my schedule, right? So it's a changing landscape, and that's really kind of exciting, and it's all different types of clients. But yeah, these last few years have been interesting because I'm a salesperson. So I love to be around people and sitting in front of clients, and that is the fun part of the job. And so being locked in the house was certainly a challenge. So I have been on more Zoom calls than I could ever have imagined over these past few years. But we're starting to get back out into the world now, which is great, great for business and just great for my soul, honestly.
I did think when I thought about this three of you, I thought these are three of my bigger extroverts. I think so. So yes, this kind of work environment is very challenging. I think depending on how you get your energy from people and just trying to operate in a sort of not meeting format. I feel like we send a lot more emails than we used to, for instance. So again, these are a real difference. Is even someone your age talks to a student about entering the job market, their experience is going to be so different for a lot of reasons. I think so. I'm just going to check our Q&A. So we sort of a question, not yet. Okay, that doesn't surprise me. Just checking though. Okay, so the question, the burning question they always want to ask, but they kind of don't know how to ask is, all right, I walked out of here, I turned in my cap and gown. What happened to you? And I think it's great to know both the thing that maybe something that you did that in hindsight, you're like, boy, that was a great idea. And I didn't really know it at the time. And then maybe something you thought was a great idea that turned out not to be a great idea. But let's start with, Ted's like, oh yeah. But let's start with that, where did I go when I left, Dr. Oaks' infamous summer Shakespeare class. And if people want stories about that, I'll tell you later. But yeah, so Dan, what was your path after graduation?
Certainly. Well, my most immediate landing spot was my dad his couch right after graduating, and spent most of the summer watching Friday Night Lights and other Netflix shows that I guess were popular at the time. But really, when I graduated, I knew a couple things. One, I was passionate about writing, and I'd always had an affinity for communications. I almost minored in communications, but I ultimately didn't get quite to Zach's level, in part because I studied abroad in Brussels fall of my senior year. And this will connect back because the second thing I knew is that I wanted to be involved in politics, and that was in the wake of that trip to Brussels. I'd been at the epicenter of politics in Europe, and I thought, might as well try at the epicenter of American politics. Let's go to DC. So really, that whole summer, I crashed on couches and I did informational interviews on the Hill with a variety of think tanks. Really, anybody who felt like tangentially interesting to me from an issues perspective, from the Green Building Association to the World Wildlife Fund and many others, and ultimately ended up with an internship opportunity with an energy think tank. And that's really where my career started.
Two things I want.
Yeah, please.
I want to highlight two things here. One, informational interviews, which I must have tattooed on my forehead at some point because I say that all the time. And two, you were actually physically there.
Correct.
In Washington. Yeah. So, that's an interesting question. I don't know the answer to that. And I don't think any of us do, do I need to be there to get a job? And that's just something they're going to have to consider when they're looking at jobs. But, just a thought. So sorry, carry on. I had to push the informational interview thing.
Yeah. No, I'll highlight both of those points because it's important. I really had no experience in true networking before then. There had been some opportunities at Furman senior year where I think you could go to kind of networking functions, but I hadn't done it in the context of trying to find a job. And to be fair, to your first question, do we need to be on location or where we want to work? I mean, I think that calculus has changed a little bit with everything over the past few years. The expectations are different. And if I can take a view through the rose-colored glasses at everyone who's graduating this coming spring, there could be a great opportunity for you to be part of a more flexible workforce that recognizes those boundaries, the old guard that we need to be in the office from 9 to 5 every day. It's not the same anymore. So I could go on that for a while, but the informational interviews, those conversations, many times where I had someone tell me, we can offer you this unpaid internship, or we don't have anything right now. And as attractive as that sounded, I was looking for gainful employment, and eventually just one conversation led to another, and was able to find this opportunity. And I will say that what I immediately learned being in that work for just a few months is, you're going to find out rather quickly, I think, whether what you're doing is something that you're passionate about and interested in doing or not. And just being open to learning is very important at that initial stage. But certainly my journey, and I'm not sure if you want me to go through the whole path right now because I feel like I'm monopolizing time, but my journey has been about recognizing just as much about what I don't want as what I do want to do, and has brought me to where I'm at today.
Did I mute myself? Sorry, forget about that. I do want to turn to Zach because we have a question specifically for Zach from Owen. Hi, Owen. Owen's one of my students. Owen would like to know, and I'm going to read this because he's so respectful. What kind of internships did Mr. Treu, I have never called you Mr. Treu in my life, did Mr. Treu participate in when he was in college to sort of jumpstart his writing career? So I mentioned Dan in the obituaries, but what did you do for your internships in college, Zach?
I'd say Mr. Treu is my dad's name, but he's actually Dr. Treu, so I don't know who Mr. Treu is. As it happens, I also do obituaries. That's the first thing. So my journey to where I am now actually starts slightly before graduation, 2 years before graduation, actually. My dad, Dr. Treu, the Furman professor, if any of you happen to know him, helped me out a little bit. It helped more than anything else that I was local, and I was able to use my network of my immediate family and the various connections that they have as well as me. Because my dad happened to be acquaintances with the managing editor at the Greenville News, and one day I think at the pool in the summer of 2011, he asked my dad, the college professor, if he knew any Furman students who'd be interested in hanging out in the newsroom. And my dad was like, well, I know an English major. So he put me in touch, and I went and interviewed.
I have one back at the house if you want.
Exactly. Like I can go get him. I went and interviewed and did an okay job, I guess. Talked up my English career, which hadn't really started yet. I think I started my major the next week. It was a little later than some folks, it's true. Yeah, yeah. I was just so focused on communications before I realized there are other things, other better things out there. Anyway, I went in as the weekend obituary assistant for that first semester of junior year, and then when I studied abroad in Edinburgh, my second semester of junior year, I passed it on to my man Dan. So we both started off in the same place, which was an incredible thing to reminisce on now. But yeah, so I mean, one of the main things, one of the big, I guess, takeaways from that is when I came back from Scotland, and I knew that I was going to be taking Shakespeare on film that summer, but not doing a whole lot else work-wise. I reached back out to the contacts I had made at the Greenville News and asked if I could start doing a little bit more, which I didn't really know what I meant by that, honestly. I just kind of wanted to just come in during the weekday and actually see people who weren't the one guy covering the entire newsroom on Saturdays and Sundays. And they let me do it. It wasn't very much, and it wasn't, just a few extra hours a week, but I came in and sat in the middle of the newsroom and reported to kind of a three-headed triumvirate of the social media editor, the managing editor, and the assignment editor, and got a little bit of experience there. It was mostly just grunt work, like I would drive somebody's press pass out if they had forgotten it. But eventually, as they got more comfortable with me sitting with them and contributing, they let me start writing some stuff. And over the course of the next year, my senior year, I was able to get a few bylines here and there. Wasn't really doing any real reporting, but I was interviewing people. I was doing mostly feature stuff and rewriting press releases and that kind of thing. But anyway, long and short is, by the time I graduated, they decided they would allow me, because I'd been trying, I guess, to stay on, not full time. They said I could come in 29 hours a week, because if I made it to 30, they would have to start giving me benefits. So I did that for about 8 months. At the same time, to supplement that, because 29 hours a week at a newspaper, not going to do a whole lot for you. I used one of my connections there to get myself another part-time job at a local printing company. I think it's gone defunct since then. Proofreading newsletters. I think they were mostly for nursing homes, like a chain in the Midwest or something like that. Anyway, so that's what I was doing after college. I was working 2 jobs. I was part-time with the Greenville News doing, I like to call myself a staff writer. That's how they bylined me when they bylined me. I was more of a newsroom assistant than anything else. And I was also a proofreader at the printing factory, or whatever that place was called. But pretty quickly after that, just a few months, like through the summer and into the fall after my after graduation, I started to get the itch. Like I mentioned, I was local. I'd been in Greenville for 21, 22 odd years at that point. I was looking to go do something else. And my man Dan was in DC. So a mutual friend of ours started talking up the idea of, like, maybe we go join him. And he passed along some job boards that I think he actually got from the Furman Political Science Department. So kudos to Furman for helping out on that. And I applied for a bunch of things, stuff that I was absolutely not qualified for. Ad agencies, consulting firms, communications firms. I think I probably applied to APCO, where Dan works, honestly. The one place that actually deigned to call me back was the PBS NewsHour, the nightly news broadcast on PBS, aired out of WETA in Arlington, Virginia. So I was able to schedule an interview for their desk assistant program and do a phone call, which was nice because I didn't have the wherewithal to actually make it up to DC. They hit me with a news quiz, which I wasn't expecting, and I bombed. But the rest of the interview went all right, I thought, until I got rejected the next week. But then unrejected the week after that. I got a kind of a sheepish email from the coordinator of the program saying, like, hey, okay, actually, if you want to, you can still come up next year. So I said my goodbyes, and a month later, moved up here.
That is fascinating. I didn't know that last bit. Do you know why? Did they ever tell you why? Or did you want to know why? Maybe you didn't want to know why.
I did not do as well on the news quiz, as I already mentioned. I think the rest of it was a little bit of, I don't know if I've ever been that good at an interview. I can talk a lot, but I tend to be more honest than I probably should. And I think the one thing you learn eventually is that you really do need to make yourself seem bigger and better than you may think you actually are. Don't underrate yourself, is what I was getting at. There's a lot of benefit to selling yourself, not lying, but selling yourself in a way that doesn't end with you self-deprecating every single other sentence.
Yeah.
So I think that was the one thing I learned, and I can tell an anecdote about my current job and how that helped me later on. But yeah, I came up to the to the PBS NewsHour, and one last bit on this, and then I'll yield the floor. The way that program was set up was it was supposed to give you insight into every single part of creating a nightly newscast. So that's like the reporting elements, like working on a beat and interviewing people, working in production and research and kind of the behind the camera stuff. And then the administrative aspects, sitting in the newsroom, answering the phone, dealing with angry viewers, that kind of thing. And what I realized on literally my first day, as we were walking around and like shadowing the other interns who were about to like rotate off the program, is that, wow, I did not want to be a journalist. All I want to do is production, and kind of took that as soon as I could and ran with it. I came to the NewsHour to stop doing news.
That's so interesting. But that's great, because you saw that and you had the ability to go in that direction at that place still, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I've always kind of wondered about that. So it's good to know how you ended up doing that. Yeah, all the people I sort of worship on the NewsHour. All right. Allie, tell us that you had internships. Like,
Yes.
How did that work for you?
Well,
but you also went abroad.
I'm a little bit older than these fellows. So today I literally had to think back and write down what you did when you graduated. But the summer before my senior year, I guess I thought that I wanted to go into sports broadcasting and be the next Erin Andrews. That was what I was going to do. And so the summer before my senior year at Furman, I interned at ABC News Channel 9 in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and worked for Daryl Patterson, who had been the news guy or the sports guy there for a million years. And he was so wonderful, and it was a great experience. But after that summer, I was like, I don't think I want to do that, just because the timing was straight. It's working nights, weekends for not a lot of money. Not that money is the most important thing. You can't tell, but I'm 6'1", so I was recruited to play women's professional football as I was covering it that summer. And I'm like, no, I don't want to do that. No. So that was great. I mean, it was such a good experience to be in the newsroom like that. And I'm like, this is not really what I, necessarily want to do. And so after graduation, I did a lot of applying to a lot of different positions. So I was kind of thinking do I want to go into marketing? And I ended up interviewing, I cannot even tell you the name of the company now, but interviewing for this position. It was a marketing position that was super fancy. I wanted it so bad. So I was interviewing for that. And then on the side, my friend at Furman, his dad's girlfriend owned a local bridal magazine in Atlanta at the time. And she was like, hey, I need someone to start writing featured weddings. And I'm like, okay, so I know if I don't get this marketing job, I could do this featured wedding thing for a while. Great. I did not get the marketing job. It went to someone else. So I was super disappointed, but I started writing featured weddings. And so I got to go to the wedding and interview all the vendors, and I'm thought it was the coolest thing ever. And then they ended up needing a salesperson to start selling ads in the magazine. So that just kind of naturally led me into sales. And I think when you're in school, maybe a career in sales you might not think about. I never really did. But that natural progression just happened for me. And I'm like, this is fun. I don't mind talking to people about this. I believe in what I'm selling. It's a cool magazine. And it was also nice because I'm, featuring all of these different vendors, and I could say, why don't you buy an ad next to this feature I'm writing about you? So I worked at that magazine for about a year, and of course it was 2005, but my base salary, I don't know if I should share this, was $10,000, and the rest was commission. And so it's you're either kind of wired to be okay with a commission type job or you're not. And for me, I'm just wired to be motivated by that. I love that the more I work, the more money I make. And I was scraping by that first year, But after really hustling, like I started to make some good money. And I'm like, this is fun. Like I could do this. So I worked at that magazine for about a year and then ended up going to theknot.com, which maybe the girls have heard of The Knot, but The Knot's the biggest wedding website in the universe. So
If you've ever been to a wedding nowadays, you know what that is, because you have to go there for everything, you know?
Yes, exactly. So yeah, I started at The Knot as an assistant to a region of sales reps. So I was just kind of like their right-hand woman and helping them with accounts and all of that. And then from there, ended up getting a job as a fashion account executive at The Knot. So I sold fashion advertising to designers and anything that fell under that fashion umbrella. And that was the time when The Knot was like really coming up. Like, I mean, like I hit it at the most perfect time because it was super popular. And what I learned I was like passionate about was working with local businesses, working with clients. I was fascinated by branding and, you know, how to present your brand to the world. And in the wedding industry, it's like you've got a window of time to catch the customer when they're getting married, and then it's over. So it was really interesting to help clients who were mostly wildly creative and had no business sense, you know, like, get their marketing plan together and then see the results and watch their business grow. So I was at The Knot for almost 9 years. I really grew my career there and then jumped over to Comcast. I was just kind of ready for something different. I think that's the other thing about sales that's great is essentially every industry needs salespeople. Doesn't matter what it is. And so, you know, weddings were fantastic and that was super fun. And I got to do that for a long time. And now I'm, you know, in television, which it's all different types of businesses. But I guess, you know, what I'm saying, just kind of think about that as a possibility within different types of industries, right? And the other great thing is, I think I kind of already said this, but the harder you work, the more money you make. Like, I love that, you know, and consistently every year I've been able to grow my career without necessarily jumping to the next position. It's just, especially in those early years before I got married and had a family, I could really hustle. And now I'm kind of enjoying, you know, this later on in my career, being able to relax a little bit, enjoy my family. You know, I'm a working mom, which is great. So there's a lot of benefits to going into sales. Am I selling, you guys? I'm going into sales. Trying to close this here.
So Allie, where do you feel like you see your writing skills helping you that may not be in writing something, but in understanding how to create language someone needs, or how does that work for you?
I mean, I can't say enough how important that is. I mean, my writing and communication skills, I think, just really gave me a leg up. Like in the beginning, the writing is what got me in the door working for that magazine. So that was great. But now, I mean, every day I'm crafting emails and proposals, and my communication and writing skills are so important. And I mean, being in sales, there's a lot of salespeople out there. So you have to stand out. You have to do your research ahead of time. Like, you don't just pick up the phone and call someone and know nothing about them. Like, you know, if I'm going after a really big prospect, I learn about that person. I may put a crazy like video together to send them to get their attention. I learn about, you know, what they're interested in. You know, we've done all kinds of crazy stuff to like get that first appointment with a prospect or someone that you want to have a conversation with. But that's so important. I mean, just being able to communicate, and people get 1 million emails a day. So how do you write an email that stands out, that catches their attention? And also, you know, you want to connect with people too, because at the end of the day, when you're selling, people want to work with someone that they feel like cares about their business, cares about them, is honest, and gets it. You know, so it's so important to be able to write and communicate.
Okay, this is all just so fabulous. You're just saying the most helpful things. Okay, no, really. So I'm going to go back to, if you could identify a couple really specific things, which you may have touched on in this conversation, but something that you did that you realized later was a very good idea that maybe a student might want to think about. And so, you know, we've talked about informational interviews, we've talked about the internships, we've talked about being very open to different kinds of jobs. But then also something that you thought should just be fabulous idea that we're like, why would anybody do that? That was dumb. And you know, some of this is just experience, right? You don't know what you don't know, and you haven't been through it if you haven't been through it. So maybe perhaps a bit of a cautionary tale for our undergraduates as they start to move toward graduation. So I'm going to just start with Allie again and go back around. See, I'm still calling on people. I can't help it.
No, that's good. Let me think. Well, I guess a positive thing or something when I look back on my career is having a great mentor. Like I was just really lucky to have some fantastic mentors throughout my career. And now I'm getting to the point where I can kind of pay it forward, and there's you know, people that are on my team that I can mentor. So I think as you're building your career, to look for those opportunities, look for the person in the company who you want to be like, you know, or who you really respect and admire, and just say, I mean, you know, for me, it's like, oh, she's a mom and she's like running this crazy book of business. Like, how is she doing that, you know, personally and professionally, and really find someone, you know, I don't know, find a great mentor. So that's something that's important, I think. And, you know, I always speak up, and sometimes, you know, you shouldn't necessarily, but in the times where I shouldn't have spoken up maybe, or my idea wasn't that great, it didn't go over well, there are more times that I'm so glad I did. And like, I took a chance and spoke up. And when I was at the Knot, and I was in that first position where I was just the assistant to all the account executives and salespeople at the Knot, we had high turnover. Like vendors would advertise with us and then they would cancel, and they would come back and they would cancel. And it was just like, why are we having all this turnover? And I'm like, has anyone asked them? Like, is anyone calling people after they cancel? Like, could we maybe start saving this business? And I kept getting kind of like shut down. It's like, that's not worth our time. We should be going after new business. And I finally got them to listen, and we started to be able to retain those clients. And it started this program of every single client that cancels gets a phone call. And how can we, you know, keep their business? But I kind of had to push and fight for that. So sometimes it, you know, it's worth it to keep pushing those ideas and suggesting that you do something differently. And sometimes when you're young, I mean, I don't know, I remember when I was like young and maybe a little too arrogant, people don't want to listen to you. And you do have to earn the right to be heard. You know, you've got to put in the time and show that you're willing to do the work, and then people will respect that, and I think listen to your opinion. But that takes time.
I think it is a big shift to move from being a senior with the authority of knowing how to be a good student for your whole life, and then all of a sudden you are the low person on the totem pole, probably in a way you haven't felt like since you were a freshman in high school.
Yeah.
And it is a different kind of relationship with people who are sometimes decades older than you are. I think that's a good point. I just want to emphasize something else. And some of you know my horror stories about why I left law. If you don't respect the people you work for, get out of there. Mm-hmm. Because you're going to become like the people you work for eventually. So you want to make sure those are people that you can look up to and emulate and learn from, and, you know, in my case, not get arrested because you're working for them. But I think that is a huge thing. And that is, of course, to do with job satisfaction, but also they're going to grow you the way they want you to be. And you have to decide if you want to be like that. So, okay, Zach, your yes, that was a good idea. And no, I should not have done that. Thoughts?
Yeah, sure. Well, I second the mentor thing, honestly. One good thing in my mind about having a mentor, finding somebody to kind of hitch your wagon to a little bit, is that if it's, as long as it's not your direct supervisor, you have somebody to bounce future moves off of. I've always, especially in my early career out of college, everybody's very supportive. Everybody's like always wants to talk to you about your path for growth and everything like that. But it can be pretty awkward to say that to the person who's signing your paychecks. Who probably, if you're doing a good job, doesn't actually want you to leave. And so not only is it nice to like have that sounding board, but that's a reference that you don't have to feel really awkward about putting down there. And that segues me. I'll do two things that you shouldn't do. One is seems, I think, extremely obvious, but I did it anyway when I was 22. So maybe it'll help somebody on this call. I mentioned how when you're younger, everybody kind of wants to help you along your path. So when I was applying for jobs off that job board in the fall of 2013, I had to listen to like the social media editor who was my boss kind of at the Greenville News, who was like asking me what I wanted to do next and everything, and saying that she would help me along the way. And then going ahead and listing her as a reference on pretty much everything I applied to, which, worked out fine, except that she called me into a conference room one day shortly after I got an email from PBS NewsHour and said, "Why did you list me as a reference without telling me you were going to list me as a reference?" So absolutely don't do that. Do not list anybody as a reference without asking them first. It was fine. She gave me a good reference, but or a good review or whatever it was. But yeah, that was very silly of me. So I highly recommend not doing that. And the other thing I mentioned, I alluded to this earlier, but I was honestly just fascinated by the scenario when it happened. In my current job, I went through a few rounds of interviews. First interview with the person who had the job currently, who was, I guess, vetting people on her boss's behalf, and did fine. I mean, my current job is sort of a lateral move from my last job, so I could talk the lingo already and do it right. Then I talked to my boss, or the hiring manager, the person who hired, and did fine on that. And then I needed to talk to the head of our department. And I came in for that, put on a suit and everything, and thought I did okay. Like I thought I was sort of, pretty well set up for it at that point. But I acted like more of myself than like my business self than I probably could have. And what I'm sure is I didn't impress her. And a few weeks later, after hearing nothing, I get another email from her assistant saying, "Can you come back in? She wants to talk to you again." And I asked, "All right, absolutely, but like, can you tell me why? Like, what should I be prepared for?" And she's like, "Oh, she just wants to get to know you a little bit better." I go in and she reads me the exact same questions. I got a second chance. I think because I had impressed in the first two interviews, I got a second chance with the third interview. And this time I recognized what was happening pretty fast. And I was overexcited about everything. I emphasized how pumped I was to the potential for working for this company, what a hard worker I absolutely am. Well, truths. Again, I was not lying or anything, but I wasn't, making snide jokes about anything. I wasn't trying to insert any self-deprecation to make myself seem more human, because that's not necessarily what you're looking for. You're not looking for a buddy when you're the head of the department. You're looking for somebody who's going to do the work and get the stuff done that you want to get done. And so, thank God I was given that opportunity to redeem myself. But, that is, I think, my biggest fault, both in interviews and in personal settings. Can get a little too jokey. So, when you're in those scenarios, make sure you know that you're selling yourself. You're not making a friend. You're trying to get a job.
That's also a difficult relationship to negotiate, right? Sometimes when the students come out of high school, occasionally they'll call me by my first name and I try to shut that down. I'm like, I'm not your mom. I'm not your high school teacher. I'm not your friend. I may be in the future. I'm friends with all these lovely people, but it's a different kind of relationship. The same thing with the boss. It's a different kind of relationship. And, we do try to be funny when we meet people. We want them to like us, but that's not, the notion of you're a product and you have to sell yourself. And I know that sounds horrible, but, I say to the students sometimes, they're going to be paying you. They need to know what you can do for them. You're not doing them any favors. This is an exchange, pay, do work. So yeah, the fact that you're a product is perfectly fine. Think of yourself in the third person if you have to. I do think that when we're nervous too, we tend to, go in and start making jokes about, I know I do. So that's something you have to just know about yourself and know like kind of when to turn that off. And, you're right. There's a business self and there's a home self. There's, what you wear to work and what you don't wear to work and, all those things. And you're right. It's not a lie. It's just that way you have to be at work. Your parents, I'm sure, never said this about you. But, they'll say, why are they so well behaved at school and so crazy at home? Because everybody is. It doesn't change your entire life. Allie's laughing. So yeah, you gotta chill and be a professional person at work, and that's perfectly okay. But that was probably a good time to learn that, and thank God they saw that in you, Zach, and they wanted to let you, have a do-over, because that's not always how it works. Okay, Dan, you've had plenty of time to think about this now.
Almost too much time, yes. So I do want to go back quickly. I feel like I would be remiss not to mention this. Zach and I were random roommates freshman year when we got to college, and then he did follow me up here. We have been great friends. He was groomsman in my recent wedding since then. So for all of you, thanks. Little congratulations here. For all of you worried about what's life after college like, you can maintain those friendships. They can get even better, and it's just a different kind of friendship. So it's something to look forward to.
He also lives 2 blocks away. Like I've sat in that chair.
We definitely could have done this together. He lives.
I was gonna say, like, you probably hear each other.
It's a little cold outside, so at any rate, so a couple of the things I want to highlight first from things folks have already said. One, mentors. I mean, I can think of probably 5 folks in my career that have been absolutely instrumental in where I got to today. And it was because we built a relationship that went beyond work, and I could have those conversations and say, I'm not growing anymore, or I'm really struggling in this role and I'm not sure what to do. And I think having that kind of relationship is so important, to be able to ask somebody those questions that's been through it before. It certainly served me well. Also echo what Dr. Oaks said, because when I think about things that I wish I hadn't done, my second job was at an agency here, a smaller agency. I learned a ton at the agency, without a doubt. Gave me my crash course in consulting. I learned how to run everything you can do from a digital perspective. And that's the beauty of working for a small organization. The culture that I was a part of was not positive. And there were many aspects of it which were ultimately debilitating, at least for me. And I think especially when you're early in your career, at least in my case, you feel a sense of loyalty to the places that you work at. And there's also an insecurity about, well, where am I going to go next? Or what do I do from here? And I wish I could have gone back and told myself, there are plenty of opportunities for you. And you don't need to stay here to try to salvage this situation. You can go be in a more empowering, positive, collaborative place. And those do exist. And that is certainly what I found to be the case at APCO. It's the best culture I've been a part of, perhaps since the Furman English department. In terms of other things that I would recommend doing, I think it's safe to say that Furman attracts a certain type of student. The fact that you're all here, thinking ahead about your career shows that you're driven, you're ambitious, and you really want to be serious about the pursuit of what you want to do in the next step. And with that, I think, if we want to call it type A personality, which I don't look at as negative, comes a certain degree of, I can do these things on my own. And, I want to be self-reliant. And when I get into that job, I'm just going to handle the aspects of work that are given to me. I would not recommend that. Ask questions. There are no dumb questions. And for people, as Ali spoke about, when you're leading teams as we are now, it's much more helpful for a question to be asked on the front end than to get I'll use that word again, deliverable, that is completely off base. And it's not that you don't care about it. It's you didn't have all the tools or experience to know how to approach something. So definitely ask questions. I had another don't that I've forgotten because I've just been going on for too long now. I'm sure it'll come to me at some point. I guess don't, take yourself out of any potential opportunities, especially the job market right now. We're in the midst of the great resignation. That means we've got a lot of people switching positions for various reasons. And so there's a lot of opportunity out there. And even if you are happy in your current position, when you do make that transition, always have the conversation and be open to what else is out there, because you'll learn from it and you'll learn things about yourself and what you want to do. So I think I covered most I wanted to say, but Allie and Zach already said most of the good stuff anyway.
Well, and these are common experiences and they're common problems. And I think that's a really important point you're making is, I think a lot of students think I'm the only one. I know this. I'm the only one who doesn't have a job yet when I graduated. Like, nobody does. It's fine. But because they are isolating, you're isolating yourself, you think you're the only one, so you don't want to talk about it. And that just makes everything worse. And it's just not worth it. I'm going to ask if remind people to put stuff in the Q&A, which I see somebody else has. To remind you, I put in the chat for our students, the Alumni Association. I just want to say yay for Melanie Armstrong of the Alumni Association, who sets these things up for me. I don't have to mess with this technology at all. Melanie does it. Thanks to the Alumni Association and to Alex Ricciuti. Students, we now have, former students, a dedicated person in the Malone Career Center for us, for humanities departments. So I work with Alex Ricciuti, who I learned recently is younger than Jack. Zach, I'm working with somebody now who's younger than my kids. There's a little bit of a freak out. Okay, but these people are tremendously helpful. And current students, these people can be tremendously helpful to you. And I'm happy to put you in touch with them if you want to work with folks in the Career Center and in the Lebanon Association, because Melanie connects people like this with people like you. So there is a little assessment thing in the Q&A. Current students, if you could please fill that out. I'd be super happy about that. Let me check the Q&A here as we've got another question. Hi, Becca. Thanks. This is Rebecca Furlong, one of my current first-year students. For Allie and Dan, or just one at a time, how do you convince a person to mentor you once you find someone you look up to? It sounds kind of busy, but what if silly, but what if they're busy? That is a good question. That's not unlike the using someone as a reference without checking. Yeah, assuming someone's going to be your mentor can be kind of a bad idea. So how do you approach somebody like that tactfully and to make a successful relationship?
That's such a good question. I think for me, it really happened pretty organically, right? So you'll get into that job or that position, and Zach's right, it's usually not your direct boss, right? So it's someone else. And depending on what industry, you go in, you'll see those people within the company and you'll meet those people. So, week one, if you think someone's cool, you're not going to be like, hey, want to be my mentor? Like, you want to give it a little bit more time than that and play it cool. And it could just be, hey, could we grab coffee? Could we have lunch together? And just very subtly kind of start picking their brain. Think of one or two questions, you want to ask them and let that relationship kind of organically happen. Like, I don't even know if the word mentorship was ever even, stated out loud. It wasn't like, my mentor, Patricia, wasn't my formal mentor, but I learned so much from her, and I'm still, I met her when I was at the Knot. So I think those things will just organically happen, and I loved, looking for someone who can be objective. So it might be someone at your current company. Maybe it's not. Like, there are so many industry groups that I'm a part of, and maybe someone that works for a different company, right? That can be objective about your career path and what to do next. And I love the way both you guys answered those other questions that made me start thinking back, and the advice of when to go to the next job. Like, I stayed at the Knot probably a year too long because I had grown so much there. They were so good to me for so long. I loved the people, I loved the job, but I had outgrown it, and it was time, and Patricia was the one that was like, Allie, it's time. Like, you've outgrown this. You've got to make the jump. So that was a long-winded answer, but I think those relationships will happen organically.
I think that's absolutely right, and agree. This is an excellent question because it's almost like becoming Facebook official, like, oh, I just dated myself, or a first date, right? So
Facebook did not exist when I was at firm.
know.
Okay, people.
Well, okay,
go ahead.
I think it was Uber and Venmo for us. So just to give you some context. Yes, great question. So I think Allie's absolutely right. A lot of this happens organically, and some of it's sort of you connect to somebody or connect with someone, or you see their career path. You think that's really interesting. I'd love to learn more about that. And really, just that coffee is a great place to start. And some of it is also dictated kind of by the questions that you're asking. And so you're asking about career path. You're asking about things that you're dealing with in your current role. I think it is important because we do have a tendency, or at least I do, to get locked in, tunnel vision on what I'm doing and my work and in the firm, not thinking about the broader landscape and what I want to do. What are my goals 3, 5, 10 years from now? And am I fulfilled in what I'm doing personally and professionally? You want to be able to have those conversations with someone who doesn't have, again, a vested interest in you remaining a part of that company. That said, I have had the benefit of having, I guess at this point, all of my direct supervisors to date I've been able to get to that level with. And some of that is maybe a factor of where I've worked, or I've been fortunate. So I don't want to promise that to you, but I do think that you have an opportunity in the way that you approach your colleagues and if you do it with your best foot forward and in the way that is clearly you're trying to become a better professional, you're trying to find that path that's going to make you more passionate about what you do and driven, it's hard for people to say no. And the last thing I'll say is if you have any kind of, apprehension around asking people, for me at least, being able to give it back, like Ali mentioned, and be a mentor now is by far the most rewarding part of my job, because I can see myself in some of the folks, and I continue to learn from my mentors. So it's I guess the circle of life, as it were, from a mentorship perspective, and there's a lot of opportunity to do that. So thanks for the question.
I just want to say, Rebecca's a first-year student thinking of that kind of question. So yay for her. Okay, so I guess we have 4 minutes left. So if you're going to ask a question, throw that up in the Q&A now. I guess the last thing would be just one piece of advice if you give them to position themselves well before they graduate. So where they've got, they can use the services of the Career Center here after graduation, but while they've got us available and resources here, what's one thing you would suggest someone would do, like maybe within that senior year, to really kind of position themselves well to start looking soon? And again, without the anxiety of thinking you have to have a job the day you walk out of college, because that is just really not a thing very much.
I'll give it a shot. First, I would say also take out the anxiety of feeling like you have to find your career passion right when you graduate. Because I think what was an interesting theme across all of ours, I felt like, was we talked about starting in a certain position and then quickly realizing, I actually don't really want to do that. I'm really more passionate about this. And so there is, just from that experience, and it may not happen for everyone. You may have a couple of those before you find the thing, but don't feel like you have to have it figured out at that stage. I don't know, I would kind of storyboard. I didn't do this, certainly. I told you I was couch surfing, but I would storyboard, what you were most interested in and passionate about, and then put that against your skills, and then start trying to find the Venn diagram of what fields and opportunities may be representative of what you're looking to do. And really, as an English major, I feel like I haven't reinforced enough how much your writing is going to benefit you no matter what you do, because whether it's sales or writing a tweet or a very well-crafted email, some of the best emails I've ever written were 2 sentences. It's going to help you a ton. So think about ways that you can leverage that. And I would think about that Venn diagram of what you're interested in, what are the skills, and also what skills you're interested in gaining. There are some skills that you can't hope to have before you graduate. That's part of it. You're going to get those hard skills from the job, but just off the cuff, Venn diagram. See if that works for you.
I like that. That's a great way to think about it, because I think people don't think about matching those things well. Okay, last quick word from Ali and Zach.
Just to tag on to what Dan was just saying, and actually what Ali said earlier. I actually remember taking, a seminar, my senior year at Furman, just about the various careers that you can find as an English major outside of the typical fields, like journalism or literature or what have you. Because as Dan just said, like, everyone needs a writer. It's like sales, like every single position, any single industry you can think of. Not only writing still is valuable, but sometimes there are jobs that are literally just writing. So I really would highly encourage you to not limit yourself to any specific industry, any specific position you can think of. I applied for dozens of things before I actually made it up to Washington, and didn't hear back from any of them. My next bit of advice is just don't get discouraged. Especially your early stages. It's going to be hard to interpret what jobs are suitable for people right out of college, what jobs actually do want a couple years of experience, how tight your resume is for any particular thing. Keep trying. You have plenty of time. Really, and it might not feel like it, but you don't have to, as Dr. Oak said, you don't have to have it lined up right out of school. You have all summer, you have all the next year. Don't fret too much about it and just keep trying. Don't let, if you get rejected once, try again. Keep going for it. It's
not even an if. Everybody's going to get rejected.
Exactly.
You just are. And this isn't like, college where you're applying to 5 or 6 schools. This is a lot of things. You're going to get rejected. It's nothing personal. The right thing will hit you.
Yeah. And, try again. If it's the job you really, really want, I mean, reach out. Briefly, I was actually in charge of the internship program at the NewsHour, and the one woman I hired who did the best afterwards, I didn't hire the first time. And she said she was the one person who ever sent me a thank you note for being interviewed by me. And when she reapplied 6 months later, I looked at my notes and didn't have the slightest idea why I didn't hire her. She also sent me a second thank you note at that point. So I snapped her up as quick as I could. I think I apologized her first week. Like, sorry, I don't know what I was doing. Anyway, she's on CNN now on Saturday morning. So she's doing great. So don't let it, it was my stupid fault that I didn't hire her in the first place. It could be someone else's stupid fault that they don't hire you. So just keep at it.
Okay, Allie, you get the last word. Yay.
Oh, how about that? How do I follow a Venn diagram? Like, I don't know. But I think, I don't know. You're in school. So first of all, I sound crazy, but just really enjoy this next time. Like when I look back at my time at Furman and the friendships I made, my husband and I had a hard year this year. Our baby was born 3 months early. So spent the first several months in the NICU, which was nuts. And he's beautiful and perfect now. But my Furman girlfriends were texting me every day, checking in. It's like that foundation of relationships and friends that I built at Furman, going on 20 years later is still super strong and one of the most important things in my life. So have fun and enjoy yourselves these next few months first. And then I would just say practically start networking. Talk to everybody, talk to your parents' friends, talk to your, friends here. I mean, everyone. Like that's how I got that first job. Was a friend at Furman. His dad's girlfriend was hiring someone, right? So, and that's probably is the salesperson in me. It's like you make enough calls, you cast a wide enough net, like you're gonna find something, and that first thing you find will not be the thing that you're doing forever. It's gonna lead to the next and the next and the next. And if I could go back and tell, my 21-year-old self who didn't get that job that I desperately wanted, I'm so glad I didn't get it. Like I ended up meeting my husband through that wedding job. He owned a catering company. So, that's a personal thing, but it's so true. Like things happen for a reason. Don't get discouraged, continue to network and talk to people in many different, types of jobs and careers. Get an idea for what their day-to-day life is. Like, what are you actually doing day to day? Could I see myself enjoying that? What kind of a lifestyle does that afford you, right? Like, do you want to be working crazy hours until 9 and 10 at night? Do you want to have your evenings off? Like, think about those kinds of questions, and ask for advice and just be open to whatever comes. But I was so glad I got to do this. It was so fun. Made me think back to all those fun Furman times. Really good.
Well, it is 8:03. We're well on time here. All right. So much thanks to all of you. This is actually, I do this because I get to see you guys. If the students show up or not, that's fine. But I get to see you all. And it's just been lovely. And yes, I still have many great memories of that Shakespeare class. I don't know why that one summer was so memorable, but it really was. And you going to Bonnaroo. You going to Bonnaroo. Okay,
Dan and I for years have been talking about how he beat me in that class. And
okay.
Wasn't going
Right,
to mention that, Zach, but thanks for bringing it up. Yeah.
Current students, if you would like to talk to any of these folks later, I have their contact information, and I'm sure they'd be happy to speak to you. Former students, love you all. Thank you so much. Wonderful to see all of you. Good luck. Send pictures of the baby. Thanks, everybody. So I think I'm going to stop. I think I can stop recording now, and we'll be done. So thanks, everybody. And next month, February 15th, will be our next session. All right.
Thanks,
you.
everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Great night.